Oh my gosh, you guys, we are almost done with the Constitution. So today we are going to finish up with the articles. So my first question is, how many articles are there? Hopefully you guessed right, 7. The first article is the legislative branch. The second article is the executive branch. The third article is the judicial branch. The fourth article, you guys should have already watched an Ed Puzzle about, but I'm just briefly going to go through this again. Is about relations, is mostly about relations among the states. So the first part and probably the most important part is the full faith and credit clause. So basically it's saying that each state must recognize the validity of the laws, the public records, and court decisions of every other state. One of the major reasons they put this into play is because they were hoping to prevent debtors from fleeing to other states. And even one example for like today, if someone was involved in a car accident in Illinois, Illinois says that you should be given, $2,000 in damages, and the defendant flees to Florida because they're trying to refuse to pay it. Well, the state of Florida would have to enforce that judgment, and they would hope to collect the damages, so you would still receive your money. So that's the idea of the full faith and credit clause. The next one says require states to give citizens of other states the same rights as their own citizens. So no state can discriminate against the residents of any other states. So you have a right to pursue a job in another state or to purchase property in another state, that kind of thing. The next one is admission of new states. So that is one of Congress's powers, is that they can create new states. However, they cannot just create a new state out of a state that already exists. So if Chicago wanted to become the 51st state, Congress wouldn't just be able to simply create the state of Chicago. It would have to actually go through the Illinois legislature first. And then they also have the power to govern and make rules and laws in the territories. So places like Puerto Rico. And then the last one guarantees the protection of the states by the national government. So protecting us from attacks outside of our borders, and then also if there's any kind of internal disorders that are happening. So that's Article 4. Hopefully that was just review from the Ed Puzzle. Article 5 is the amendment process. So remember, the Constitution was written in 1787, and at that point in time, there was less than 4 million people. It was 13 agricultural states, and it was all along the Atlantic coast. Today, we look very, very different. Over 330 million people, all sorts of different geographies and climates, different resources, different economies, and the Constitution still works today in a very different society. And even if you think learning about the Constitution is super lame, like that's pretty cool. And the reason that it has been able to still function and work today for us is because the framers weren't stupid. They allowed for us to be able to, for the Constitution to kind of adapt to a changing society. So allowed a little bit of flexibility there. All right, so how do you amend the Constitution? How do you make a change to the Constitution? All right, so over 11,000 amendments have been proposed, but only 27 of them have actually been ratified. Why? Well, because it's kind of a complicated process and they need a pretty extraordinary consensus. There are dozens of new ones that are brought up every year, like maybe limiting an income tax or limiting how long someone can be a Supreme Court justice, those kinds of things. But like I said, it's very difficult to actually get it passed. So what does that process actually look like? So there's the proposal step, and then there is the ratification step. And so really there are 4 different ways that you can actually go about trying to amend the Constitution. So there's 2 different ways to propose it. So either it can be proposed by a 2/3 vote in each House of Congress, or it could be proposed by 2/3 of the states in a national convention. So one thing I would maybe note here is that it's proposed at the national level. And even though there are two different methods to propose it, the top one has been used 27 times. The bottom one has never been used. So all 27 amendments that we have today originated in Congress. All right, so then how do you ratify it? So there's two options there as well. So to ratify it, you can have the amendment ratified by 3/4 of the state legislatures, or the amendment could be ratified by 3/4 of the state convention. So if each state would have a convention, 3/4 of them would have to approve this. So the top method, so the ratification by 3/4 of the state legislatures, has been used 26 times. The bottom one with the state conventions has been used one time, which was the 21st Amendment. All right. One other thing I want to point out to you, we talked all about these constitutional principles, and one is very evident or very clear here, and let's see if you remember it. So it's proposed at a national level and it is ratified at the state level. Which of the constitutional principles is that an example of? Hopefully you guys got it. It is federalism, because power is divided between the national government and the state governments. All right, Article 6. Constitutional supremacy, or the supremacy clause. So there are a few parts to Article 6, but we're going to focus on the supremacy clause the most, but I do want to mention the other two parts, the validity of debts. So Congress had borrowed a lot of money during the Revolution and even after, and so this basically said that the new government would honor those debts. So the United States would still have to pay off those debts. The oath of office basically reinforces the supremacy clause. So all public officials, they have to owe their first allegiance to the U.S. Constitution. So whether you're a Supreme Court justice, or you are a governor, or you are someone who works in the state legislature, or maybe you are a U.S. senator, you have to swear an oath. And finally, probably the most important part of Article 6 is the supremacy clause. So it says here, Constitution, laws passed by Congress, and treaties of the U.S. shall be the supreme law of the land. So no states or local governments can make or enforce any law that conflicts with the Constitution, a federal law, a treaty, or the president. So if there is some kind of law that is in conflict, so like there's a state law that conflicts with a federal law, the federal law is the supreme law. It's more important, or the Constitution is more important. All right, and then the last one, super simple. We've really talked about this one already. Article 7 is the ratification process to the Constitution. So in order for this Constitution to go into effect, 9 of the 13 states were needed. Anyone remember which 2 states they were waiting on? Remember, they got 9. New Hampshire became the 9th state, but they were still waiting on 2 more states. It was New York and Virginia, because remember, they were some of the most powerful, most wealthy states, and they knew that it wouldn't survive without them. But that's it, Article 7. So remember, there are 7 articles, and that is all for now.